What's going on, Chad?
I am not missing that countdown ever again. I am laser focused, dialed in, even though I'm going off limited sleep.
Yeah,
over the last 3 days. So
you just got back from Nashville, right?
Nash Vegas, baby. It was a fast and furious trip, but it felt like 48 hours that never ended. But it was a great time. So glad to be back.
Did you go down like on Broadway, check out live music?
Yes, a few times. And that is just a rabbit hole that leads to another rabbit hole. Yeah. And by the time you don't know, we had a good solid game plan. We overachieved on the game plan. And but as I said, like just the right amount of fun.
Yeah, good.
Mixed with really, really good business. So it was fantastic. Fantastic trip. So
I'm glad you had a great time. I'm just moving and grooving, wedding season is upon me. Where was I last week? I was over near West Branch, which is a small town in Iowa.
Herbert Hoover.
That's right. They have a beautiful venue. I would say, truly, it's like top 10% of venues in the country, called Little Lights. Little Lights is a beautiful place.
Shout out to Little Lights in West Branch.
Shout out to Erin and her team at Little Lights. Yeah. What I love most about that venue and the group of people they have there is they're always, and I mean always, reinvesting back into themselves and the business and the experience. And that is so rare to see. It's rare to see in general, but it's rare to see it being done really, really well. So every time that I'm there, I'm just blown away by how refined they're getting. So that was a lot of fun. And thankfully, I'm there a few more times this year. But yeah, that was my weekend.
Man, that sounds awesome. I think you gotta love it when you go to a place and you can be in kind of presence of greatness and you respect the people you're with. So that's 100%. Awesome.
I also wanted to quickly talk about the elephant in the room, which is what I've got going on right here on my nose. So it's amazing how you can just look in a mirror and be like, yeah, whatever. But then you get in front of a camera that is like leaving nothing. There's just no forgiveness when it comes to the lighting and camera. So this takes me back to because I've been working out so much. I don't say that like because I'm working out so much, but
meathead.
But truly, it's like I had a crazies at there, and it's like, man, reminds me of 14-year-old Riley with braces and a moped, and trying to get the girls and using my I forgot what the acne stuff that I was.
Was it like Oxy 10 or something like that?
Like retinol? Is that retinol?
I don't know. Like that's. I'm so glad. Yeah, we're old enough to be past that, kinda. Yeah. Yeah. So welcome again, everybody, to another episode of Spinning Strategy. If you haven't heard us before, this is where we mix music and business from a POV of a seasoned wedding DJ, Riley Malay.
That's me.
And an experienced business advisor manager, yours truly, Chad Greenlee. So
the guru.
I need to build that in. I need
like a neon sign behind you that says like the guru, or like a light, like whenever you're talking, like the guru is speaking.
So and then it just like blinks. Yeah. Maybe I can get that for outside my office wall. So like the guru is in session, and
I think you should.
I think I would hear about that from the CEO of my household. So
kind of like I hear about anytime new shoes arrive at my house. I kind of really another pair, just one more.
We're that way with Bath and Body Works. I cannot say anything about soaps, candles, because then I get what do you spend in golf a year? And we're just not gonna talk about that. So we just agree that it's all good.
Smart. Pick and choose your battles and choose wisely.
Well, we got some awesome headlines today. I want to talk about scaling business, and I want to approach this a little bit. You kind of segued into it, but I want to approach this a little bit about from my time in Nashville and some observations. And I know you've got some ties to some performers in Nashville, and then talk about skill building in a way that I think is something that have been going down. And then obviously we always end with kind of the obsessions of the week. So that's the action-packed episode we've got today. But some interesting, and I don't think shocking headlines just happen. Spotify CEO comes out and says productivity is down after they just laid off how many people in the last 6 months? I mean, is that a shocker? Do we not see that coming? I mean, that's
it makes you wonder if there was such a massive disconnect between what Spotify needed for, just reinforcement as far as employees go when they first started, and then the CEO just kind of grew more and more not disconnected, but just over delegating, and then completely lost the perspective of what is needed, and they start looking at numbers and say we got to cut here, we got to cut there, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually no, we need to reevaluate.
Yeah. I agree, and I think there's a huge difference and a huge disconnect between kind of generations now. And the observation, one of my colleagues loves to use the phrase data doesn't have an agenda, and I agree. Like when you look at data, like it does expose and goes to where the numbers are telling you. But when you're dealing with people, people will surprise you, will disappoint you, it's just a whole nother ball game, and it can't really be analytics driven.
Right.
And I think when layoffs used to happen or people used to leave, there was always kind of this unwritten rule that, well, people will just step up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They want to take on opportunity, they want to climb, they want to rise. And I think now we're seeing a shift in generations and attitude towards, well, that doesn't really work for me anymore. And if you see that that's not needed, then obviously it's not needed. So
Right.
I like what I'm doing. I'm satisfied with what I'm doing. I built my lifestyle around this exact moment in time, and I don't really want to go up. I don't really want to go down, and I don't want to expand out.
Right.
And it will be interesting because we're seeing layoffs don't tend to get a lot of exposure now. It seems like that, even internal. And this leads to the other headline too, where University of St. Thomas coming out, they're cutting. They're not a huge university by any means, but they're cutting out 26 positions and leaving 30 unfulfilled, $10.5 million shortfall in the budget. And the explanation that one of them was giving was very interesting, I thought. So if you kind of dive deeper, and I may not get this totally accurate, but basically applications, I want to get your perspective. Applications were up, let's say 30%.
Mm-hmm.
So that would say, well, obviously, we shouldn't have any budget problems if they're up. However, the financial need increased over that number. And so the way that I understand how, kind of colleges and private colleges use is, their tuition is one number, and the people that can afford it, that don't need the financial need, kind of make up for everybody else. Mm-hmm. So it kind of tells me that something is wrong with the model, where if our applications are going up, we're raising tuition, but we still can't meet budget. There's something wrong there.
Yeah. I mean, times are a-Changin, as Bob Dylan once said. Because I would have to assume that some of the positions that are found within a university, whether it's public or private, I would have to assume some of those might become pretty antiquated, right? I mean, and how many people are going to school online versus going to class and like physically going to lectures? Again, the live streaming that happened during COVID. I just think, personally, you're talking to a guy that never graduated college.
Yep.
So take this with a grain of salt, people. I really am just going to sit back and eat my popcorn and watch what unfolds in the world of universities. I don't see them becoming more powerful, other than your specific, your med students, law students. I mean, obviously the list goes on and on, but those are the big big ones in my mind. And then the rest, with the technology continuing to evolve. And then we haven't even talked about AI and how they're going to not only, here's what's interesting. You have AI that they're going to, of course, want to integrate into school, but how do they control the integration to ensure that it doesn't tarnish the capabilities of those students to learn in an organic way that is taught by a professor? Does that make sense? Like, will
Yeah.
I just think it's going to surpass anything a normal human being could teach.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely seeing, and it's not even just universities. I mean, this kind of problem, to your point, is not sheltered in just education. We're seeing inflation and rising prices everywhere, and budgets aren't being met, but maybe investors are. And so, there's a greater separation from like the front line, like you said, to the detachment of the whole. And, fortunately, I'm not in an organization, and haven't really been in an organization where there is that distance. Always have had pretty in the weeds, kind of know what's going on, and you're really only a phone call away from the CEO. But I could see uh, others that aren't that, and it's pretty black and white, and they don't really understand kind of the nuances of
Right.
the business, but they know that they're making money. When I was at the conference this last weekend, you can kind of look around, and there's people that are really successful, and you start diving in, and they've been successful for a long time, but they cannot pinpoint why. And that's a ticking time bomb. That's something, if you don't know why you're successful, but you've been successful, well, what's going to happen when all of a sudden you're not?
Right.
Do you know why? And odds are you don't. And I think that's kind of the crux that we're in. You mentioned AI, you mentioned a lot of things. We are just in a very, I think, the rate of change, the pace of change is going so fast that we don't have, by the time that we figure it out, it's already old news.
Correct. Yes. Right.
And we can't seem to pause long enough to have an intelligent fix. We just kind of plow forward, and that creates a lot of unrest, a lot of lack of kind of leadership. And I think at some point you just need somebody to step in and be like, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to do it. And I think confidence will get them there.
Yeah. And something you said about successful people not being able to acutely describe successful doesn't mean you can teach that, right? I mean, there's such a massive difference between somebody who owns a business and somebody who leads a business, because as we know, possessing any sort of leadership skills has to be kind of just part of who you are, right? I mean, especially now in today's world, as we look at, I would say, individuals in their that are maybe 14 to 21 roughly at this point. You look at like their basic needs, which is typically their iPhone, social media account. I've heard a lot of people talking lately about 16-year-olds not really anxious or excited or kind of dragging their feet on getting a driver's license, right? And so
I have one. Yep.
yeah, right. And so
Mhm.
that, I mean, again, it's wild. So again, it's changing. It's kind of like, well, the desire to drive to a movie theater or to take somebody out on a date, and you got your own car and you're listening to your own music, like you can do so many things differently now, that I
Yeah.
just think that pattern, as small of a box that is, as far as that example goes, is going to lead into so many other things that will impact the workforce. And what scares me is that as somebody who has 9-year-old twins, I think I'm always thinking about what will the landscape look like when they are in their early 20s, right? Like, it's just going to be so wild, man. And I don't think anybody can even come close to predicting what that's going to be like.
They can't. And you mentioned that. And this was something that I had for us to talk about before we start talking about kind of growth and scaling growth as it relates to my observations in Nashville. I was watching a TED Talk with Jason Fried, who's the CEO of 37 Signals.
Okay.
And he did kind of this survey of his people without really kind of telling them why. And it was asking one question. When you want to kind of go somewhere to be the most productive, you want to be productive, where do you go? And you would think they would have one answer, and you would hope. But they said coffee shop, commute ride home, outside in a park, in my favorite chair. I had all these answers, and you know what? Really, none of them said the office.
Yeah,
the office, right? And I found that, and I think 37 Signals obviously has probably a pretty relaxed culture, but I think overall, when you kind of look at your kids as an example, I used to look at my youngest on the phone all the time. And I'm like, oh, you're wasting time. You're wasting time. You're wasting time. And lo and behold, kid's 14 and about the age of 16 gets an award in the mail. And it's the silver play button from YouTube.
Yeah.
This kid built a YouTube channel on his phone to almost 200,000 subscribers. And I don't know how many millions and millions and millions of views on his phone. So it wasn't like he was being unproductive by any means. And I think it's more of like that just psychology of, well, maybe what we're using our phone for is to escape, and they're using it as a tool, to figure out that next piece.
Yeah. There's definitely something happen that I'm witnessing, like with my son Asher, who again is 9, and he has a Nintendo Switch, and we monitor. He only gets it on weekends. And thankfully he's so involved in jujitsu and CrossFit, and like he loves to be active and really is finding a lot of joy and passion in that. We let him use the Switch on the weekends, and what's so crazy to me is how quickly he can catch on to new games, how to navigate the different levels and worlds that are found within certain games, and his ability to learn the movements. And it's I don't even know what you would call it. Like the way your brain is operating is so much faster than what ours were at that time, because you're introduced to all of this kind of stimulation that is designed to keep you excited and creative and addicted, some would say, which is why we monitor how often he uses it. My daughter could really care less about video games. We're very lucky there, but it's just, again, so that all leads into, okay, what are they going to be passionate about, right? Like, what are they going to do in their lives that will bring them not only financial gain and success, but fulfillment? Like, what will the next generation find fulfilling? Is it freedom? And it has less to do with money, right? And they're just like, yeah, we make enough to live in like a tiny home, and we have a car share program here that's found in most major cities, bike sharing program, more of a co-op vibe. We don't need all the things that you guys think you need, right? That I think is going to be on the horizon in some capacity as well.
Yeah. You bring up games. I always think of like games as like computer developers, like, graphic artists, like those sorts of things. And I got an interesting story that you kind of triggered, and it has to deal with music. So you remember back when the first iPad came out, and I got one. I was one of those guys, and it had GarageBand on it.
Yep.
So I used to travel all the time for sales at a financial services company, and I'm flying back, and I think I'm flying back from Denver to Cedar Rapids. And I got my headphones on, and I'm kind of fiddle farting around with GarageBand. and I'm kind of, I'm using the instruments on there, and I'm recording, and I'm doing a couple layers, a couple tracks, just having fun learning it. Right. This guy sitting next to me, and he kind of taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's GarageBand. It's an iPad." He's like, "Oh, that's really cool." And so I was like, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a drummer." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I was like, "Well, are you what do you?" He's like, "Well, I'm on the weekends. I fly wherever somebody needs like a loner drummer."
Nice. Yeah.
It's like, and I never know, I don't know the music until I show up. I thought that was fascinating. I didn't know that was a thing. And sure enough, we get off the plane, and there's a placard for him, and they're taking him to whatever gig he's going to, and he plays for like 3 nights in
Nice.
Iowa, and then he's going to fly
gig.
back.
Great gig.
But then I go, "Well, what like, do you do that all the time?" He's like, "No, I'm actually the drummer for EA Sports and EA games."
Nice. Okay.
He lays down all the tracks for the music on the EA Sports game, and sure, he's like, I checked out his YouTube channel and stuff. Anyway, he's like, "Hey, why don't you lay down something and then put a track for me?" And I think I played like Bruno Mars "Grenade" like on the piano. Sure. Like do 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 do,
Right.
And then he started laying down the track, and we sent it back and forth for a while. We lost touch, but it's most amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like, yeah. So yeah, who knows where things are gonna go. But I noticed this when I was in Nashville, and this kind of leads to scaling your business and the difference that I want to talk about. The difference between kind of Grammy winning artists that are, making it versus what you see down there. And I don't think it's that far, but from a technology perspective, I went around, I was in 6 different establishments. So I observed quite a few bands. I think by the 5th and 6th, I probably had less observation and more participation.
Sure.
But we were with a group, but we noticed, every single person has an attachment to their mic stand, their phone.
Yeah.
And, they're taking Venmo, they're taking song requests. I don't know what else they're doing. Maybe you can breed some insight to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that. And the observation, there is so much talent upon talent. And you can definitely tell a little bit between some people, but for the most part, you're just like, these people have honed their craft. And so I started thinking about, like, what is the difference between why they're there, as an example. And I don't think that's probably a bad gig, but long term, I would bet that half of them want something more.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. To the people that we see performing at the Grammys, rolling out new music all the time. I'm sure you have some more insight into this, but that's just how do you scale from, playing in the barbecue honky-tonk at noon for the business crowd, and then you're playing at night, maybe at the Kid Rock bar, and then all of a sudden next week you break out and you're invited to play at the CMTs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or CMA.
Yeah. From roughly 2007 to 2012, I produced music with 2 other guys every single day, and we would work our 9 to 5s, and we would go real hard in the world of music production. So I was producing a lot of pop music, hip hop music. So Kenny Jacob, shout out to him. He's down in Atlanta doing his thing down there. He's working with some really cool people. A guy that is grinding every single day. He's actually getting more into engineering along with producing. And then the other individual was a gentleman named Michael Lynch. Michael Lynch, if you look him up at Michael Lynch Music on Instagram, he's down in Nashville. He's been down there for years. He's my age, maybe a year younger. Me telling you this story will get into kind of how you see individuals elevate their career and when it becomes a real big decision that you have to make. So what he did, he graduated from Iowa, incredible voice. He's actually bilingual, grew up in Wheaton, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. Really was fascinated with just the Spanish culture and language and all of these things. and went on The Voice, made it. There's actually a clip of him on YouTube. He was singing Bailamos, Enrique Iglesias song with Christina Aguilera. A really cool shot of him. And then was telling, and we were talking on the phone almost every day while he was down there filming. And he's like, Riley, this show is so produced, man. Like they already know who's going to win. You know, he's talking like CeeLo Green was on there at one point.
Yeah.
It was like CeeLo Green, Enrique Iglesias, I think Adam, what's his, Levine.
Adam Levine.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that was the crew, and I don't think Blake Shelton was part of it. I don't know. Anyways, so 2012, I think. And he's like, man, it's just not what I thought it was. And one of the worst, I'll never forget, he goes, one of the worst things that can happen is winning one of those sometimes because of the contract that you get. And you get these 360 deals where they control everything. Now, again, there's an argument on both sides of that. So he made it pretty far, but didn't make it as the winner. And then he went and he started to, kind of like the drummer that you met, he was subcontracted to sing in different wedding bands for these really big weddings in Chicago that were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on their wedding. They'd bring in like a 7-8 piece band, a horn section, backup singers. He was one of the vocalists, one of the lead vocalists. He did that circuit for a little bit, made good money, realized, you know, there's got to be more to life than being in a wedding band. I'm gonna stretch out my wings a little bit, and I'm gonna fly to Nashville. And so he did. And again, talking with him on a pretty regular basis about what it's like being down there. Number one, there's people, as far as artists and musicians go, they come and go all the time. They start getting homesick. They just want to do something else. So it's just boom, they're rolling through the live entertainment down there. Good money. It's a hustle. It's a grind. Mentally, it's really tough playing covers all the time. I mean, how many times are you going to play Friends in Low Places, right? Or, you know, I'm sure Morgan Wallen songs, and, you know, the list goes on and on and on and on. Wagon Wheel. I mean, oh my gosh. So what he told me in regards to what sets those individuals apart, because you could have a room full of 100 incredible singers, great piano players, incredible guitar players, multi-instrumentalists, like monsters, a room full of 100. The biggest thing that sets them apart is their songwriting skills, who they've teamed up with, because that's big in Nashville too, is teams. A group of 4 guys that write all the time. You look at Old Dominion. They were songwriters, and they started to get to a point where, like, we're writing really good stuff. Like, why are we selling these? Like, let's do it ourselves. Songwriting. And what's really tough in some of those situations down in Nashville is that those bars will not let you play original music, right? Play the hits, get them to drink beer, make money, and we'll pay you, but you're the catalyst to getting the party. We don't want to hear a new song of yours. Like, this ain't the time, replace.
That's interesting.
It'd be no different than if I'm DJing a wedding. I'm like, hey guys, here's a song that I produced a couple days ago. Hope you like it. And the bride and groom are like, bro, like,
crickets.
So he's put out a bunch of stuff on YouTube and stuff. And it really comes down to your ability as a songwriter. And then you start to dive deeper into, okay, you're a great songwriter. You're getting the attention of some really great labels. They're offering you some pretty decent money and good deals and, you know, distribution and tour options and all of these things. Then it comes down to what kind of contract you're going to sign, and what sort of decisions do you want to make versus what decisions are going to be made for you. And he stayed very strong in regards to protecting his ability to have some of that freedom and flexibility to do his thing. It's just a longer process though. And so he's writing music and doing the things that he can do. So I think a lot of times, you know, you look at some of these country artists and just artists in general, where you wonder, why were they a one-hit wonder? Why did this person have a smash hit for the whole summer and now they're never to be seen again? A lot of times they chew you up and spit you out and, like, we're good. Like, there's nothing else you got here. There's no another depth or things that we can do with. So you are a commodity. It is a business. That's why I was like, I wish I didn't look at things that way. I wish I could look at it even like through the lenses of like my wife, who can go in and just enjoy the music. And I'm always thinking to myself, yeah, I wonder like what the background is, and like, you know.
Oh yeah, so that's me too. Like, I'm looking away from the band, and I'm paying attention to like the sound engineer, the lights, kind of knowing the surprises before the surprises happen. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it's a grind, but you mentioned teams and partnerships. And I think business overall. So I was at a conference down there, and you can definitely just observe the floor, and who is doing it alone and who is kind of revealing their secrets to others.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge advantage when I talk with business owners and when they mention to me, "Hey, Chad, do you know so and so?" They know everybody.
Yeah.
Or when we carve out a drink and they're like, "Hey, these are the people that you should get to know, and here's how they're going to help you. Would you like an introduction?"
Yeah.
Those are the people that know that doing it alone does not scale. And just because I tell you my secrets, everything that I've done, you've still got to go and execute them. You've
100%.
still got to do them. And, 99% of you won't. I could tell you everything to do that I've done for my business to scale. And you're going to be like, do it my way. Like, I don't need, they won't do it. They won't listen. They won't follow up. I've got a list here of about 15 conversations that I need to follow up with tomorrow when everybody arrives back. And half of them are just connections. The other half are like, I want to do business now. And then the others are continued conversations that have happened over the 3-year period. This is our third time being at a specific conference, and we're now being recognized and consistent and observed, and it's the deepest we've ever gone. So I think that one of those secrets, kind of the scaling that you mentioned, was partnerships and teams, having somebody to do it with, and make sure that you're bouncing ideas off. And then that translates to business so well. If you're well connected and you don't try and go out alone, you're only successful as your network.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
the number of people that you're doing it alongside with versus trying to compete against.
Yeah, I agree. I think, those kind of conferences that you are not only a part of, but you're speaking at, which is so cool, is you're kind of looking at the relationships, specifically the new ones, as kind of like tilling your garden, right? And then you're planting those seeds, and then it's up to you to water them, man. Because if you don't water them, they're all going to die out. And how many times have we seen that? How many times have we had a coffee meeting with somebody who has great ideas and you're not sure about the execution, and that same person is just moving on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and they're not watering anything behind them? That's what I train so many of the DJs on, is like, the opportunities will be there if you can really take care of the people around you and making sure that you're treating your overall maintenance of these relationships as a job itself. Because, like, you got 15 people you're going to reach out to because you want to kind of carry on those conversations. I mean, that's a job, right? Like, that's a task you have to do. There's certain things that won't just naturally present itself unless you're really working hard to develop a team. And then what fascinates me most, not only just as a DJ, but somebody who is obsessed with the formation of music and how a hit song is created. And on Spotify, I don't know if you've done this before, but on Spotify, if you like a song, I think you go to the top right-hand corner and you go to song credits. And if you click on song credits, it'll show you produced by, written by, blah, 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 blah. What's really interesting is if you look at a lot of these artists that are very popular, at least right now, go to some of their hit songs and look at who it was produced by and written by. Most of the time, it's the same crew. Now, think about like if you and I were tasked with writing a song together, mm-hmm. and we had to get very vulnerable with one another about, our struggles and whatever. I mean, that's a super intimate, vulnerable experience, right?
Yep.
So there's a reason why songwriters stick together, because when they're behind closed doors, they're letting it all out and they're gaining so much strength. And thankfully for individuals in business, you don't have to sing into a microphone about a drinking problem or your wife left you or whatever. You're just trying to focus on some of these business goals. So in my opinion, it's like, treat everything like a job when it comes to these relationships. And again, it kind of is a false narrative to say, oh no, all these beautiful opportunities and networking will just present itself on a bright. You got to work for it. And that's what you do obviously a very good job.
Well, thank you. I truly think that the universe tests everybody in certain ways. And the universe does it this way. They're like, I am not going to tell you when, and I'm not going to tell you how. But at some point, if you don't give up, if you decide to push through, I will reward you. The challenge is you will not know when that is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 99% of the people will stop right
Yep.
before I was just like, you know what? I'm going to give you a break. And I feel that's happens in relationships as well. So I get all the time asked, hey, can I pick your brain? You want to go to coffee? And I'm like, sure. Just here's my number. Here's my email. Get back with me.
Yeah.
And there's very few that I will respond to first with that. I'll generally seek out the ones that kind of hound me, and I'll be like, hey, this week doesn't work. And I'll push them out maybe a month, especially for those, because you kind of gotta, over time, there is no such thing as a bad conversation, first off.
Right.
But I think you've got to kind of reserve that for the ones that are really kind of like the Coast Guard, the ones that are swimming towards you first.
Yeah, right. Yes,
you got to rescue the ones that are swimming towards you first. Otherwise, everybody drowns. And so I've learned that over time that when usually something isn't going my way, it's because I gave up right before probably the universe was going to reward me with something, and it's my fault, not anybody else's.
Yeah, and it's good that you have that conversation with yourself, right? And you have to really go back and think about what did last year look like in regards to, I always hate like social capital because it sounds very, it's like, again, it sounds like vanity metrics, right? But like social capital is a real thing. Strategic partnerships and individuals that are truly in your corner. Is that number going up, down, or is it staying the same? And it's okay for it to stay the same. And it's actually okay for it to go down a little bit as long as the individuals in your corner are all creating mutual value for one another. In the wedding industry, to me, that's the key to success. Anybody that is looking at getting into the wedding industry and they want to quit a full-time job, and I'm sure it's the same for other industries too, but wedding industry specifically, I want to quit my full-time job and be a full-time photographer. You have to build your network up, not just of people that might pass your name around, but go to a venue and take promo shots of the venue. Take promo shots for DJs. Go in and do a lunch and learn photo session for real estate agents. Like, you have to give a ton of stuff away to really create a lot of value and build that team. Build that freaking team, man. Like, spend time on building your team. That's your foundation. Without that, you got nothing.
Yeah, that leads it's kind of the last thing I want to, talk about is, I think from a scaling perspective, there's always certain amount of skills that you'll need yourself, and then you'll learn like that doesn't fall into my wheelhouse. But I also observe too, and I think you're even, you kind of do this. You build certain skills, and you're a very curious person. Me too, right? We're all over the place. We have a lot of different skills that we bring to the table. But the observation that I've seen is too many people try and spread that skill over a long amount of time to get better, instead of obsessing over it over a compressed period of time.
Right.
If I wanted to get better at like, you and I both play the piano, and we both play pretty loosely, right? You know chord structures, and you kind of know it sounds good, and you kind of can put all this stuff together, right? Yep. I've observed you. I'm kind of the same way. I used to get in trouble in piano lessons because I would have my teacher play before I'd leave, and then I would never look at the music. And one time she caught me because she put the music up there, and she goes, play this, and I'm playing, and she's like, that's not the music. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I think too many people try and say, okay, I'm going to get better at this in a year, instead of saying, okay, like as a business, I want to get better at strategic planning, or I want to get hyper focused on my finances. So like, okay, let's plan it over, 6 months, and let's bring in something where I should say, as an example, and I'm starting to do this more and more myself, is why 6 months? Why 90 days? How about this week?
Yeah.
Clear your calendar become obsessed with it and see if you can go from 0 to 80%. And then that last 20%, yeah, that's the longer game. But to get good at anything, I think it's a defined period of time, very short. It's obsessive focus to build any skill versus kind of longevity.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. What do they say? A jack of all trades, master of none, right?
100%. Yeah.
And it's like, if you know a little about a lot, you know a little about a lot. And I don't know about the sort of impact you're going to have for a business or organization or your kind of self-care. You know, I've been again, you want to talk about being like really hyper focused on what I eat and being really, really disciplined about what I put in my body for the simple sake of seeing how it makes me feel. And there's no cheating, right? Like I don't, well, Saturdays and Sundays are kind of like, no, I want to go as long as I possibly can to see how hyper focused I can get, which typically means eating the same thing over and over and over again, which I kind of like to do in a sick, twisted way. It's like, give me all the chicken and rice. I don't care. I'll eat that forever. But you know, again, if I were to do that I'm going to do it Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then Tuesdays, Thursdays are going to be kind of, I see that a lot too. And you're just not going to make a lot of progress. And individuals are just going to have to start making decisions. Like, what do you want? I'm sure, again, you've already mentioned it in this podcast, and I'm sure we're going to mention it a lot more when you go to these conferences, because you're much more out and about than I am when it comes to those things. You've been doing this long enough, Chad, where you can look out in the room and you can see the individuals who are going to take the ball and run with it versus somebody who's going to take the ball and kick it just down a hill, and wherever it ends up, it ends up.
Yep. Man, good talk today. This is
you know I'm getting fired up when I get blotchy. There's my telltale.
I know, blotchy. That makeup's coming off. I mean, holy.
This zip's gonna pop itself here soon. I'm gonna if I get too much blood going.
All right, the way we end everything is kind of our obsessions of the week. What are you obsessing over lately? You just said eating, but there's probably more.
I am diving really deep into the world of what I call digital crate diving for music.
Crate?
Like back crate diving. So like back in the day when DJs first started like DJing, they would use vinyl records. So they'd go to record stores and they would crate dive. So they would just, hey, I can sample this, or I can use like this drum loop, and I can use this and this and this. So I'm kind of doing that from more of a digital perspective. So I'm going really deep into these what's called record pools. So as a DJ, I pay quite a bit to be a part of different types of communities that are full of producers that produce incredible remixes. So like I got a really cool remix of Taylor Swift's Fortnite that you're not going to find anywhere else. Like I got a guy that did it, and it's going to be awesome. And I can now integrate that into a wedding. And that's kind of how you set yourself apart as a DJ. It's your professionalism, and it's, all sorts of intangibles. But when it comes to music, which I guess is intangible too, play something that nobody else is going to hear. So I'm trying to find really exclusive things that will fit into the arena of weddings to facilitate what I think will be a really cool experience. So digital crate diving, and it takes very long time, and that's why I'm up until 1-2 o'clock in the morning most of the time, going like this. If anybody wants to see what 2 o'clock in the morning looks like in my office, it's this. Woo! That's what 2 a.m. looks like in my office.
It's not what my office looks like at 1 a.m.
How about you, Mr. Greenlee?
So we've talked a little bit about AI, but there's this theory going around, and me in theory conspiracies, I will look at one, but there's some chat GPTs that are popping up, and there's a chat GPT 2. So we're on like chat GPT 4 or 5 or whatever, right? But there's this chat GPT 2 that has come out, and nobody can identify its source, and it's better than anything that's out there.
Scary, actually.
The theory is, and it is interesting, is that the AI made it
itself. That checks out.
Recreated a better version of itself, and I am sitting here. Part of me is hoping it's true, and the other part of me is like really hoping it's not true.
One step closer to them being all self-aware. So let's enjoy it while it lasts, folks.
But yeah, that could be mind-boggling if it starts doing that. So yeah, that's kind of my latest obsession. I've been going down that rabbit
I'll
hole.
have to look into that version and just kind of see what it's like. Like I said,
Yeah, be careful because there might be people spying on you. I've been very careful. I've just kind of hopped into that underground world. And the other thing is probably the last thing that I'm on this 100-day kind of challenge for myself is putting roadblocks in place to really observe my screen time and build up my production, personal kind of skill building time. So I put some blocks in place and on that over the next 100 days.
I love it. You're always focused on an area in your life that hovers around discipline. That's what I love about you. I like being around disciplined people. Speaking of Michael Lynch, again, quickly down in Nashville, Michael Lynch is one of the most disciplined. You want to talk about a guy that is into his diet and fitness. I mean, the dude is in killer shape. And it's like, he takes care of his voice and doesn't drink. I love that. That's a big reason why him and I have still remained in close contact. Typically when we communicate, it's like, about music. We're also like, hey man, like, what are you eating these days? And, so
That's
anyways,
great.
discipline wins every time.
Discipline wins. And speaking of discipline, we got to get out of here. That is a fantastic talk track on another episode of Spin and Strategy. I'm Chad Greenlee.
And I am Riley Mullane.
We will see you all next week.
Thank you guys. See you later.
Bye.